Alexander Hamilton remains one of the most enigmatic and intellectually formidable figures in the pantheon of America's founding fathers, a man whose meteoric rise from obscurity to statesmanship encapsulates the paradox of the American experiment itself. Born into the precarious margins of colonial society in either 1755 or 1757 on the island of Nevis in the British West Indies, Hamilton began life as an outsider, illegitimate, impoverished, and geographically distant from the centers of imperial power. Yet, through an extraordinary synthesis of ambition, intellect, and rhetorical brilliance, he propelled himself to the forefront of the revolutionary generation, imprinting upon the fledgling republic a financial and constitutional architecture whose reverberations endure to this day. His story, at once tragic and triumphant, illustrates not only the promise of self-made ascendancy but also the peril of a temperament incapable of compromise, culminating in the duel with Aaron Burr in 1804 that extinguished both his life and the fullest realization of his political vision. To comprehend Hamilton in his totality requires moving beyond the hagiography of modern popular culture and confronting the tensions that animated his life, the pull between aristocratic order and democratic turbulence, the friction between economic pragmatism and ideological purity, and the ceaseless clash between his extraordinary foresight and his sometimes self-destructive impetuosity. In this sense, Hamilton was less a man of his age than a man outpacing it, a theorist of nationhood who conceived of the United States not as a fragile confederation of states but as a consolidated polity capable of competing with the venerable powers of Europe. His biography, therefore, is less a chronicle of personal success than an extended meditation on the nature of political modernity itself. Hamilton's early years in the Caribbean are essential to understanding the contours of his later worldview. Orphaned as a child, deprived of wealth and social legitimacy, he absorbed an early lesson in the precariousness of individual fortune. What he also absorbed, however, was a ferocious commitment to self-advancement, cultivated through voracious reading and honed by employment in a mercantile house where he acquired a precocious understanding of finance, credit, and the rhythms of global commerce. The very texture of Hamilton's political philosophy, the conviction that credit undergirds power, that commerce animates liberty, and that order is the prerequisite for prosperity, can be traced to this formative exposure. Whereas many of his contemporaries idealized agrarian self-sufficiency, Hamilton's imagination was oriented toward the complexities of markets and the sinews of fiscal strength. His escape to mainland America, facilitated by benefactors impressed with his talent, thus marked not merely a geographical relocation but the transplantation of a mind destined to reconfigure a continent. The American Revolution provided the crucible in which Hamilton's genius was tested and displayed. Initially a young artillery officer, his combination of audacity and administrative competence caught the attention of George Washington, who soon elevated him to the position of aide-de-camp. In this role, Hamilton functioned as Washington's pen, drafting orders, reports, and correspondence with a clarity and precision that belied his youth. Yet Hamilton's ambition exceeded secretarial duties, he longed for battlefield glory, and when he eventually secured command at Yorktown, he vindicated his martial aspirations by leading a decisive assault. What is most significant, however, is not the isolated heroism but the broader lesson he extracted, that independence was meaningless without the scaffolding of effective governance. Victory against Britain had been achieved, but the fragility of the post-war Confederation made clear that disunion and insolvency threatened to render that victory hollow. It was in the realm of constitutional design that Hamilton's intellect shone with incandescent force. His contributions to the Federalist Papers remain among the most sophisticated explorations of Republican government ever penned. In essays such as Federalist No. 78 on the judiciary, No. 70 on the executive, and No. 85 on the ratification process, Hamilton fused Enlightenment rationalism with pragmatic statecraft, crafting arguments that transcended mere advocacy and entered the realm of political philosophy. His insistence on energy in the executive, on the necessity of judicial review, and on the perils of excessive decentralization reflected both his reading of Montesquieu and Hume and his lived experience of administrative chaos during the Revolution. He perceived, with almost prophetic clarity, that liberty unmoored from structure degenerates into anarchy, and that only a strong, centralized framework could harness the centrifugal energies of a diverse republic. Critics accused him of monarchism, and indeed his admiration for British efficiency was palpable, but his ultimate project was not to replicate aristocracy but to engineer a novel synthesis, a republic that could endure. Hamilton's tenure as the first Secretary of the Treasury under Washington constituted the apotheosis of his statesmanship. In a series of reports to Congress, the Report on Public Credit, 1790, the Report on a National Bank, 1790, and the Report on Manufactures, 1791, he laid down the pillars of American economic power. His vision was nothing less than transformational: the assumption of state debts to bind disparate regions to the federal government, the establishment of a national bank to stabilize currency and extend credit, and the promotion of industry to liberate America from agrarian dependency. These measures not only restored fiscal solvency but also, more profoundly, recast loyalty to the Union in financial terms. Creditors of the federal government now had a vested interest in the Republic's survival. Here was Hamilton's genius, to recognize that political cohesion required economic interdependence. Yet here also was the seat of enduring controversy, for Jefferson and Madison denounced these policies as betrayals of Republican simplicity, fearing that Hamilton was erecting a new aristocracy of financiers.